This is the way it feels to move through summer in Lululemon. Iconic Align softness without the front seam. For our smoothest look and feel ever, summer won't know what hit it. Stretch your limits in the non-stop flexibility of the new Lululemon Align No-Line Pant in select stores and at Lululemon.com.
Have you ever spotted McDonald's hot, crispy fries right as they're being scooped into the carton? And time just stands still. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
You are listening to Women's Running Stories, where exceptional women runners share inspirational stories about their running experiences.
Hi, my name is Sarah Williams. I'm the host of the Tough Girl podcast and the founder of Tough Girl Challenges, which is all about motivating and inspiring women and girls to get fit and active, to travel and explore, to see more of the world, to take on big challenges. My mission with Tough Girl Challenges is to increase the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges.
Oh, yes, I have runner, adventurer, and podcaster Sarah Williams on the show, telling her origin story, how she transitioned from working in wealth management in London to exploring the world through epic adventures. But before we hear more from Sarah, I want to welcome you to Women's Running Stories. I am Cherie Louise Turner, and I am the host and producer of this podcast. Thank you for being here. This is a terrific story. Sarah Williams, I have wanted to have her on the podcast for a long, long time. And here she is going to tell the story of how she became the adventurer that she is today. And it is just a good one. Let's just say she went through some serious learning curves on her way to launching into her adventuring lifestyle. Now, that was over a decade ago, and since then, Sarah has made a life of seeking out and completing some really big challenges. I'll just name a few for you because there are too many to list out here. She's done a couple versions of the famous Camino in Europe, including the 500-mile version, the Camino Francés. She has hiked the 870-mile Wales Coast Path, and very recently, she finished Te Araroa, the 1,860-mile hike across New Zealand. And that covers both the North and South Islands. Sarah chronicles her own adventures through her Tough Girl Challenges YouTube channel, and she hosts the wildly popular Tough Girl podcast, where she has insightful, motivational, informative, inspirational conversations with a huge variety of women adventurers. She also has some solo episodes where she talks about her own adventuring, so she covers that on the podcast too. Now, before we hear Sarah's story, a few items for context. Sarah is going to talk a lot about the Marathon des Sables. This is a multi-day stage running event that takes place each year in Morocco in the Sahara Desert. And there are 6 stages, but the racing aspect of it ends after 5. The first 3 stages are roughly the distance of a marathon, so about 26 miles. And then comes the long stage, which is about 50 miles. That is followed by a final marathon. And then there is this last short day when you actually get to the final finish line. The MDS is a self-sufficient stage race, and that means that runners carry just about every single thing they need throughout the duration of the event. So any food, clothing, toiletries, etc. The race does provide sort of tent-like shelters for rest and sleeping, and they provide water, and there's also a lot of medical staff on hand. MDS is notoriously difficult, especially because of the heat and also because of the terrain. There are a lot of big sand dunes. Sarah also talks about the 2,200-mile Appalachian Trail, and that goes between Maine and Georgia here in the United States. And Sarah is from the UK and she uses Celsius. So you're going to hear her mention 38 to 40 degrees. And for those of us who use Fahrenheit, that is 100 to 104 degrees, much like the temperatures these days in Boston. It's been really hot here. Also, she mentions going to Australia, and just to keep in mind that Australia's seasons are the opposite of what we experience here in the United States or in Europe, so their summers are our winters and vice versa. All right, let's get into it. Let's hear how it all started for Sarah Williams, beginning at a point when running and adventuring were not a focus in Sarah's life at all. Now here to tell her story is Sarah Williams.
So I had graduated university and I'd moved down to London just to sort of follow the crowd, get a graduate job, which is what, 90% of my friends were doing. And that's what I thought I wanted to do. And I think my main motivator was money. So I initially went into accounting before moving over into wealth management and private wealth management, which I look back now and I giggle about. But so I spent a number of years working in wealth management, looking after very high net worth individuals and making the rich sort of even richer, which I initially really enjoyed. It was living in West Kensington. It was working in Knightsbridge. It was very fun, very glamorous, being taken out for nice meals, lots of canapes and champagne. It was very much, especially when I first moved to London, living the champagne lifestyle, but on the beer budget. And so I think being a millennial, it was very much work hard, play hard. So everyone I knew was working really long hours. You gave everything to your job. And because I am like a hard worker and an achiever and very goal driven, I knew exactly what I had to do every day, what I needed to deliver on. And so I was very, very good at my job. I got promoted quite a few times, which was always fun. But the running actually started. I was living with two girls and they didn't have the type of jobs that I had. So I was actually earning quite a bit more money than them. So what I initially decided to do was to sort of reduce my salary down so that we were all on the same amount of money. So I just did that by putting extra money that I earned into savings. So we all had roughly the same amount of money each month. And it was during the summer months and I'd actually spent my money. I run out, but I had paid my rent. I'd paid for my food. The only thing that I couldn't afford was transport of how to get to my job. So this was then I was in West Kensington. So it was only like 3 miles away to Knightsbridge in summer months. So I was like, well, I can just walk it. And then it was like, well, actually, I could run it. It's not that far. So I initially started running. So for that week, I ran to and from work. And we had showers and everything at work as well. So I just had a small backpack, carried, my little summer dress, had a little bit of makeup, all of that good stuff. And running to and from work was just amazing, not only for my mental health, my physical health, but also in terms of my job as well, because I'd be getting to work at like 7 a.m. I'd be showered and changed, ready at 7:30 at my desk, doing all my emails, getting on top of all of my to-do lists, just being super productive. And then even working till like 7 o'clock at night. And then I'd run home, decompress, get everything out of my head, finish the day. And so it just became a really great thing to do. And then the running started to evolve. So I started to run, because I didn't have the money initially to pay for my transport. And then I was like, oh, I really enjoy this. I started running on a regular basis. And then I found out, I got to October of that year, and I found out loads of my friends had signed up for the marathon. And I was like, oh, this sounds fun. And because I don't like to do things by halves, I ended up running the London Marathon like 5 times. But what I think that was doing for me was filling in this need. Like there was definitely like a hole where something was missing, like something wasn't gelling. And I was obviously looking for it in all of the wrong places, but I didn't know what that was. So I started doing London Marathon and then I took on other things. There was something called Tough Guy. That's what it was called. It was called Tough Guy, which is like the original obstacle course race before all those other challenges came in. it was a very sort of quirky 13-mile running through mud, running through ice. So I remember doing stuff like that and just absolutely loving it and just really like, oh my God, this is amazing. But I never honestly realized that you could do adventures or challenges because I never saw women doing adventures or challenges or making a living from it. And I don't know if that was just, I just wasn't aware. I wasn't really looking for it. I just never really discovered it. And I sort of realized it got to the point, I am a very positive person. I'm a very goal driven person. And I was working extremely hard, achieving what I thought I wanted to achieve. And from the outside, it looked like I was very, very successful. I worked with a big global bank. I got a lot of status from who I worked with. I had a nice title. I had, a nice paycheck. I had a lot of things that would tick a lot of boxes for many people. But I also felt as though I was wearing this mask because it wasn't who I was. I was sort of like pretending. It was like play acting being a corporate person. It wasn't really sort of my true personality. And I still remember I would travel into work. We eventually moved over to like Canary Wharf. And so I was traveling on the underground, 40 minutes on the train, on the tube, underground. You come out in Canary Wharf and there's these underground, massive like shopping malls, and you can get to your building underground. And then you get to your building, and all the buildings would have laundrettes, gyms, dry cleaners, food courts, everything that you could possibly need, so you didn't need to leave your desk. So you go in the morning, go and grab your breakfast, go sit at your desk, work straight through, go buy some lunch, literally go down. Food is amazing, great choice. Come back to your desk, work again, evening meal, same thing. You'd finish working, you head back downstairs, get on the escalator, get on the tube, head home, and it's dark. And I think especially sort of during the winter months, you realize that you're not going outside. And this is the time of like Blackberries, because it's going back about 10 years ago. And you'd be constantly like looking at your Blackberry, or like the red light would flash. And you wake up in the morning, first thing you do is check your Blackberry. What type of day am I going to have? What problems am I going to have to solve today? What fires am I going to have to put out? And I just remember feeling very grey and very ill and very tired and very run down. And I think I'd just been promoted. And one of the messages that they give to you is, if you've exceeded expectations, is like, right, you've got to look for the next level. How are you going to get there? What plan are you going to put in place to achieve? And look around the people in the business who are more senior than you. Who are your role models? Who do you want to be like? Who do you need to role model to become like that? And I remember looking around thinking, I don't want to become like any of these people. I do not want to be in my 50s doing this job, working in this building, spending 12 to 14 hours a day looking at these desks and these people and the phones and the grey, and everything's grey, the grey screens, the grey telephones, everything is grey. I mean, very like a nice grey, quality grey, but it was still grey. And I actually couldn't work out like why I was so unhappy. But I also realized at that point, my job was not going to change. Like, yeah, I might get promoted, might get paid more money, might get a new title, but the essence of it was not going to change. And that's what I spent the majority of my time doing. But I was also in a very privileged position. I didn't have any debt. I didn't have, I did have savings, but I didn't have a mortgage, didn't have children, none of those other anchors holding me on. So I was very fortunate. I ended up leaving my job and decided to take some time out. And then this is where things really changed for me, because I ended up, it was ridiculous, and it sounds ridiculous. It was like I was to Verbier skiing, and then I went to Africa and climbed Kilimanjaro, and then I went to Ibiza with friends, and I was partying in London because it was the summer months, and London is sunny and amazing. And then it was like, Sarah, you are just burning through. This is ridiculous. You need to figure out what is going on in your life. And I think that was the hardest point, because I felt like a failure. Because it was suddenly like, well, what are you doing now? Like, you're 30, 31, 32. You don't have a job. You don't have a career anymore. And I felt I didn't have a purpose anymore. And I felt really lost, because I couldn't understand why I wasn't happy when seemingly I had everything and other people were happy with what they had and I wasn't happy. So I previously, when I was 18, I'd done a lot of traveling. I'd gone on a gap year, spent time in, Australia and New Zealand and Southeast Asia, but I'd never spent time in South America. So I ended up going to South America. And one of the ways that you can travel around South America is on these buses. And so I'd had, a large notepad, and I would just sit and write. And I would ask myself these questions, what do I want my life to look like? What does that look like day to day? What are my goals? What am I achieving? Like, what do I actually want to do? Which I know sounds ridiculous, but I'd never really asked myself those questions. I'd never really stopped to think about what it was that I wanted to achieve. It had almost been these stepping stones. You get your GCSEs and you go on to do your A levels, you get your grades, you get the good results, you go on to a top university, you graduate with a 2-1, you get a graduate job, you start your graduate job, you do 1 year, boom, you get your promotion, like that sort of never ending ladder going up. And taking this time out when I was in South America, I was really, really deeply thinking. And for me, it was like, well, I want to travel. I want to explore. I want to do adventures. I want to be able to live and work anywhere in the world. Because when I was growing up, social media wasn't around. Social media didn't come in until I was in my early 20s. And so things like YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and being an influencer and making money online wasn't really a thing. And that was still evolving. It was a time of like blogs. And I ended up coming home. Oh, sorry. The other thing I should say with that, so I had the personal side, the travel, the adventure. But on the other side of that coin, for me, is I've always been confident. I think that's something to do with like my upbringing, going to a boarding school, I think that all traveling from a young age. And in the job that I did, which was very male dominated, I was generally the only female in rooms of men, white men, normally, having to argue my point, put my discussion across, etc. So one of the things that I was quite passionate about, one of the things that I saw all the time was women just not being treated fairly and seeing the sexism and just almost seeing it but not fully being aware of it. But I wanted to make sure that women and girls got opportunities and could see other women doing adventures and challenges. Because I think, well, hold on, I'm a woman in my 30s. I'd like to think I'm pretty educated. How did I not know even this was a thing, that there's women out there running incredible races and taking on these ultra challenges and cycling around the world and sailing around the world and doing all these things? And I wanted to ensure that I could combine my passion for motivating, inspiring women and girls with the adventure and challenges that I did. Because I wanted to combine the fact that you could be a girly girl, you could like the colour of pink, but you could still go out and do tough challenges. You could still travel and explore and do all those things. And just because you're one doesn't mean that you can't be both. And I came up with Tough Girl Challenges, which was all of those things combined. So I came home from traveling, moved back in with my parents, and I'm incredibly privileged that was an option for me. I thought I was going to be living here for like 4 weeks, maybe 4 months, until I figured it all out. Still living with my parents like 10 years later. And to be honest, that's one of the main reasons I can do what I do, is because I do have this support from my parents. So I came home, and because I'm sort of a business type person, and I think it was a bit of procrastination as well. I started writing this, oh my God, it's like what I would call as the world's biggest business plan for Tough Girl Challenges. I had everything, the marketing, what the blog would contain, how I was going to earn money from it, the different avenues I would go down. I was going to blog about my life and people were going to be fascinated about my blogging. And, it didn't happen quite like that. No one read my blog, not even my mum, because she's not very technical. But, and what happened then? Well, I started to think, okay, if I want to encourage your girls and young women to do adventures and challenges, then I can't just talk the talk. I've actually got to walk the walk as such. And I'd done some running previously, and I'd previously met a guy who'd done this challenge called Marathon des Sables. And I remember talking about it. So, we were having drinks in someone's house, very fancy, having wine and just, chatting about what you're up to. And when I heard about it, I was like, that's not possible. How can people do that? How do you run multiple marathons back to back, carrying everything you need on your back? That's Like, literally, it was like, no. But the seed got planted then. And to me, Marathon des Sables was the hardest challenge that I could possibly think of. And you've probably heard as well that it was named by the Discovery Channel as the world's toughest foot race. I don't necessarily believe that now. Do believe there are tougher races. But going back to 2014, 2015, 2016, it certainly was the case. And I was still in the fortunate position that I did have savings left, and I thought, well, what is the best way to launch like Tough Girl Challenges to sort of put myself into this industry? I needed to do something, and that's where Marathon des Sables came from. I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to sign up for that race. Like, I'm going to take on that challenge. 6 days of running over 250 kilometers, 156 miles, and I'm going to go for it. So I reached out. I initially didn't get a place because the MDS is run generally sort of the end of March, beginning of April, and there are roughly, this things might have changed now, but there's a couple hundred places reserved for UK and Irish entries, but those places are really, really high demand, so they do book up quite far in advance. But I got myself on the waiting list, and I remember getting an email through saying, "You've got a place if you want it." So I got the news I got a place probably October 2014, with me planning to run Marathon des Sables in April 2015. And I actually didn't make it that year. So I'm living at home now with my parents. I'm building up Tough Girl Challenges, but I wasn't working. So I was basically like, well, this is my full-time job. I'm going to train like an athlete. I want to give this my all. But I was also budgeting. So I wasn't actually working with like a personal trainer. I wasn't working with a coach. I was just doing it all myself, with advice from the Facebook group. And I always want to put advice in air quotes. But basically, one of the things that you learn is the important things is something called like time on feet. Like, that's really important. But I started doing everything. Like, I was like, well, it's important. I've got to be strong. Right? Well, let's strength train. Okay, let's go to the gym 4 times a week. Let's start lifting heavy weights. Let's do split squats, lunges. Let's do runner-specific training. Let's focus on core. Let's focus on your back, because when you're running, if you're wearing a pack, sometimes your back muscles, your shoulder muscles can collapse forward when you run. You need to have a nice strong back. But with that time on feet, going out running, back-to-back runs, running on tired legs, doing hills, doing sprint training, running on sand, walking with a pack. So I was doing sometimes 3 20-mile run walks a week. I was like, during my rest days, I'm going to do yoga. I'm also going to do cycling. I'm also going to do swimming, because that's keeping up my fitness levels doing this. And for me, this was the messages that you will be getting with the more miles, the better. No pain, no gain. Like, you need to push it hard. You have to train seriously. And I trained seriously. I was ridiculous. And I was pushing myself so hard. And I didn't even realize it until I would feel like I'd wake up and I'd feel tired. But then I'd be like, well, Sarah, mate, you're not tired, you're unmotivated. So movement can help with motivation. So get up, go for a run. Get up, do something, move your body, come on. You're training for this big race, you know, your Tough Girl Challenges. Like, no one knows who you are. You need to do well in this. And so I keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And then I'll be getting these leg cramps every evening. Well, that's obviously magnesium deficiency, right? Increase my supplements, have more magnesium. I'm really struggling to wake up in the morning, even after 10 hours of sleep. I can't wake up in the morning. But it's the winter month. So maybe I've got that SAD, that seasonal affective disorder. Why don't I buy a special light? So I'll wake up with a special light. Why don't I make sure that I buy compression gear? Because that's going to help me sleep. Well, why don't I try Epsom salt baths? That's going to help me. Acupuncture mats. Make sure I'm doing my stretching and my foam rolling. Making sure I'm having my 3 protein shakes. Oh, your skin's starting to look a little bit bad. You're getting a bit of acne, like on your shoulders and on your face. Oh, your periods aren't really coming through. Why are you cold all the time? Like, why am I so cold? Why can't I keep warm? And I just kept thinking it's problems with me. I didn't really understand this concept of overtraining. I didn't think overtraining was a thing. I didn't also understand that running, and especially for women, the pounding of your feet, especially when you're doing endurance training, can lead to things like anemia when you have like low iron levels, which can lead to fatigue. So I ended up at one point, I was, you're looking thinking, God, my vision is blurry. Like my left eye is literally starting to deteriorate. And I know I have perfect vision because I had laser eye surgery. So my eyes are literally perfect, but my left eye was starting to deteriorate. So I ended up going over to Liverpool to go and have my eyes checked at the laser clinic. Like, I'm not really sure what's going on. And I remember coming out of the laser clinic in Liverpool, and then I was struggling to breathe. And then I couldn't see. And then I was having to use a hand on the wall to help balance me because I was getting dizzy. Oh, I get emotional. But I ended up like sitting on a bench and just crying because I was just like, what is wrong with me? And I ended up having like sort of a panic attack in the middle of the streets of Liverpool. And people are so kind, and people brought me water. But I ended up getting back on. I got on a train, and luckily, like a guard sat with me, and I called my parents up. So my parents came and collected me, and brought me home. And I couldn't control myself. And I remember like my dad taking off my boots, and I was just lying on the couch covered in a blanket. And I was just like shaking. I was like uncontrollable. I was like, what? Like, I don't understand. Like, what is going on? And so I sort of had this, I don't want to use the word breakdown, but things were not right. Things were not right for me. And I was going to see the doctors, and I had to get like an ECG done, and they were literally like, this is like December now, and I'm meant to be racing in April 2015. And they were like, you cannot do this race. Like, you need to pull out. But part of me was mentally like, no, because in my head, my brain was saying, Sarah, of course you can do this. Of course you can do this. And I actually had another instance where I was out running. And I don't know if you ever had this, when your mind is trying to override your body. And my mind is like screaming at me, like, move. Come on, you can, why can't you run? Like, why are you so lazy and unfit? What is happening? And I hadn't even made it a mile. And I basically sort of collapsed on a bench and was just crying. I was like, what? Like, I just couldn't understand what was going on with me. And I remember coming home and taking my trainers off and crawling into my bed. It's still in my full running gear, thinking this is never going to happen. Like, what is wrong with me? Like, there's something seriously wrong. And I ended up having chronic fatigue. I was anemic. There was so much stuff going on. But I should just say, this was all my fault. This was all on me, because like, I was the one who made every single wrong decision that you could possibly make. But I thought I was making all of the right decisions because I didn't know better. But yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I did, and I got it very, very, very wrong. But massive learning curve, huge learning curve. Yeah, so I tried going to the doctors, and they deal with my symptoms, but they couldn't really get to the bottom of like why all of these things were happening. And so I visited a homeopath, absolutely incredible lady, like 6-month waiting list. And I remember she literally changed my life. I wrote a book about Marathon des Sables and actually dedicated it to her, Jeanette Blair. Like, she's just one of the most wonderful, caring, kindest people. And it's just some of the things we discovered, especially with regards to like my gut health. So I had something called candida, which is this overgrowth of like bacteria in your stomach where you're craving like sugar, basically. But I thought I was nailing my nutrition because I was so healthy. Like all the fruit smoothies, and with a bit of protein powder in as well, or big pasta lunches, and really carb heavy, and like bowls of yogurt and nuts and honey or maple syrup and all of these different things. But basically, massive like candida overgrowth with sugar cravings. I had probably like a bit of like a leaky gut, so actually things weren't being absorbed as they should have been. So even though I'm paying a lot for all these expensive supplements, they're not being absorbed into my gut. But Jeanette basically treated me as this whole person, because I was still training during this time. Which is ridiculous. Like, I would still be dragging myself to the gym. I would still be doing my yoga. And she was like, you need to stop. Like, we're stopping everything. Like, you need to stop exercising, or we had to bring it right back down to basics. And that's what I ended up doing. I postponed Marathon des Sables to the 2016. And I had sort of these, 6 months off, or basically 6 months of just doing nothing. I think the other thing that probably had fed into this as well is I think I was still dealing with like a lot of residual stress from my job. So that combining with ridiculous amount of training, not dialing in my nutrition or not getting my nutrition correct, all sort of compiled together. So I was pretty much burnt out. Like, I was just gone. And I started working with Jeanette, and there was lots of things that we like homeopathic remedies, but we also started doing things like journaling and writing and just really sorting out my head as well, because I don't think it got to quite a dark place. And that can actually happen with like things like candida when it goes into like your brain. So you can have like very negative thoughts, very sad thoughts, very sort of I use the word depressive, but I don't mean depressed, just very sort of sad feelings that you are having, and also the negativity that you would have towards yourself. Like, how I was not kind to myself at all. I would just beat myself up all the time. Like, nothing I was doing was good enough. And it's like, and I'm a failure, like an utter failure, because I'd failed at my job, I'd failed at my career. I'm now training for this race and I failed. I couldn't even get to the start line of this race that I want to be doing. And you want to be an adventurer and you want to motivate and inspire women and girls. You can't even get out of bed to brush your teeth. Like, you're a fraud. Like, who do you think you are to be sharing your words of advice for other women? But no, so Jeanette was a fundamental part of helping me to rejig my diet, to sort out my gut, to get my head back in the game, to get me back training again, sensibly, to get me to the start line of Marathon des Sables in 2016. So Jeanette had got me back to zero because I was minus everything. So we're back to zero, and zero is just zero. So there was no fitness at this point. There was no, I hadn't been training, I hadn't been working out, but I also realized that I could not be trusted because I'm too all or nothing when it comes to my training. So I need somebody to plan it for me, give me a structure and say, this is what we're going to do. And so we had a wonderful guy at the gym that I work at. And I remember going to him and he sort of saying, right, I'm looking for a personal trainer. This is what I'm training for. Marathon des Sables, 6 days of running, 250 kilometers, approximately 156 miles. It's approximately a marathon a day, a long stage and a marathon afters. Long stage is going to be about 52 miles. It's also run in Morocco in the heat. This is what I've been dealing with. This is where I'm at. And it was one of those ones where it was almost like, okay, right, yes, like we can do this. And we had to start really gently. Like, we really had to break down the physical side of things. But the good thing is that I actually had time. So I had about 9 months. So we started very, very gently, literally just getting back into the gym, doing like simple single leg stuff, that, body weight exercises, getting my balance back for split squats, doing ankle mobility, like the running type of exercise where you're walking on your heels or you're walking on your tiptoes, you're doing hip openers, all of those sorts of things. So it was very specific strength training, but I wasn't doing other things with it. So it was like 3 hours a week. That's what I was doing. And that was for a solid 6 months, working up to increase the weights. So, and I just left that all to him. Now, with regards to the endurance training, I was very fortunate. So my brother actually lived in Australia, lived in Melbourne, and Marathon des Sables is held in April. So I was like, spoke to my brother and his partner. I was like, look, can I come over and for sort of Christmas, so December, January, February, maybe even March, or January, February, March. And basically, so I think I can only stay in Australia for 3 months for visa reasons. So basically like 90 days. And they were like, oh my God, that would be amazing. So I'd done all of this strength training. And then January I went over, that was it, January, because January 1st, oh God, yeah, this is so funny. January 1st, I'm in Australia. It's like, and this, I mean, I also do recognize this is such an incredible privilege that, you know, I could stay with family in Australia. Again, I'm not paying for rent. I'm not paying for my food. I was basically there for 3 months to run and rest and spend time in the sun, which is what I did. So I started doing, so you start doing like, I was doing like heart rate training. So like really, really slow runs. But day one, I walked barefoot into like a cabinet and broke my little toe. And you know, you're just like, no, I'm here for running. But anyway, the positive, and it was a positive, was that it made me run even slower, like super slow. But I had my nice gum watch on, I had the fancy backpack, and I was out running. And people must have thought that I was a little bit crazy because it's, you know, there was a heat wave time in Australia. So it's like 38 degrees, 40 degrees. Most people are not going out in the middle of the day. I was going out in the middle of the day for, you know, building it up. So a lot of walk, run, 18, 20-mile days, 24-mile days. Coming back, it would literally, I mean, I must have ate them out of house and home, like protein shakes. And then, you know, I'd be eating these boiled eggs and chicken and rice, just eat. Then it was like Epsom salt baths every day. So, I mean, lovely lifestyle for me to be trained like this, but I was also taking it relatively easy. So, you know, I'd come back, I'd spent 4 hours outside, Epsom salt bath, massive dinner, chill on the couch, afternoon nap, boom, might do a little bit of foam rolling in the evening, sleep for a super long time, leisurely morning, little bit of stretching, still doing a little bit of strength work as well, you know, sort of to maintain that, heading out again. So I really enjoyed the training. I mean, but who wouldn't? Everyone else, especially if they're in the UK, they'd be training during the winter and the cold. But I was training in the sunshine. I was training in the heat. It was wonderful to go out, and especially in like Melbourne, you're running by the coast. It wasn't hilly though, so it was quite flat, but they did have great beaches, so you could run on the beaches. The other thing that I'd done as well is I was very aware of like the mental side of the challenge as well. So I created like my own certificate of achievement, which I would look at every day on my bathroom mirror, the certificate of achievement, which was telling me, you know, congratulations on running the marathon on the Marathon des Sables, which was really great. I also kept a track of all of my training that I did because I wanted to use that training as my proof that I was ready when I got to the start line. And so for me, my goal, it wasn't to even, this is going to sound a bit weird, but bear with me, it wasn't even to reach the finish line. For me, my goal was to reach the start line. And I wanted to reach the start line uninjured and slightly undertrained. That was my sole goal. Like I actually even wasn't thinking about the race because for me, because of what had happened previously, I was almost like, if I think that far ahead, like something's going to happen. So goal to reach the start line uninjured and slightly undertrained. That was it. I've been very, very specific with my training. And there's also something that I did like, once I'd reached the start line, my goal then was to complete the race. It wasn't to compete. I was not competing against anybody else. It wasn't about placing. It was about completing. That's all I want to do. So, and to do that as well, had I started the podcast? Yes, I had started the podcast. So I'd been speaking to women and had some amazing conversations with other women sharing their mindset and their mental strategies. So women who talked about the power of visualization, imagining yourself at the finish of the start line, what it was going to be like when that medal is placed around your neck. Obviously, I was looking at my certificate of achievement every single day. Mantras, stronger, fitter, faster, stronger, fitter, faster. I would focus on what I had done. So there was no beating myself up. I was kinder to myself. I didn't beat myself up if I didn't quite finish a training run or I wasn't out there for as long as possible. I was checking over my body and checking in with myself. I was making sure that I was present. I was checking out for my breathing. I was making sure that I did do the hard training sessions. So it was this balance between body and mind. And I felt, to be honest, I felt ready. I felt prepared. So when you arrive there, you're on all these coaches with everybody and you get given like this little handbook. And in the handbook is the different stages for each day. So it gives you the start and finish point. And it's called like am I going to say it right? A bivouac. It's like a large campsite. So the tent and the sleeping is one of the things that you don't need to carry with you. And this large campsite is put up and taken down every day. And you run from like A to B and then B to C, C to D, D to E, etc. So you don't actually know where you're going to be running or what the race conditions are going to be. So it's not like the same like mountainous route that maybe like you follow at a specific rate, like UTMB, for example. It's a set course. With Marathon des Sables, it changes. So you literally just don't know what you're going to get until you get out there. And I was scared. I was excited. I was overwhelmed. I was scared again, but I was happy because I'd made it to the race. I hadn't messed up my training again. I was there. I was on the start line. I knew I'd done the training. I knew I was lean. I knew I was fit. I knew I was healthy. I knew I was in a really great place. So I felt really ready for it. It was really fun. It was really freeing. And I think whenever I did get to like dark places, I would always remember this is a choice I've made. Like I've paid a lot of money to be here. I'm doing this for a reason. I went back to my list of whys. But to be honest, it just felt amazing. Like looking around at the views in the desert and just running and having everything you need on your back. Like you're having your snacks, drinking your water, connecting with like-minded other people, seeing people ahead of you and behind you, and just running at your own pace. Like it felt like freedom to me because this was the start, I suppose, of my new life. Like, a new life doing adventures and physical challenges. And so for me, there was also feelings of relief, but relief, joy, pleasure, just, I don't really know how else to describe it, but like you come in at the end of the day, you get your water, you'd have your food, you'd sit in the tent, you'd chat with your tent mates, you'd do a few stretches, you'd have a look at your little book to see what the plan was for tomorrow. You try and sleep as best you can. I only had what I slept on was basically the equivalent of like a seat pad, like this tiny little, it was ridiculous. Everyone else had like a thermal rest, but I was like, no, I'm more hardcore than that. And yeah, I suppose it was just being in the present, like being out in the desert, and it just felt right. It just felt right. Like everything I'd trained for, everything I'd worked towards over the past 18 months. And then it was all just coming together. And feeling great, like this is what I expected. Like I expected it to be hard and for it to be challenging and that it would take me to dark places, but I trained for it. I prepared for it. I'd done my mental resilience. I was ready for like the emotional side of it. And then you just sort of get into a bit of flow. You know what to expect day after day. You get in, you figure out the sleeping arrangement, what time roughly you're going to fit in. You know to run down the sand dunes, you run the flats, you walk the uphills. You keep yourself strong, you keep yourself positive. You get a Coke on like day 3, which is or like a big room, and that's always exciting. I don't know, it just felt right. So there was a point when I was running during the day, running through these sand dunes, like with my backpack on, feeling like, to be honest, like a goddess. Like I was just like, God, I'm out here in the middle of the desert. Like, and I'm running and I'm so strong and I'm so fit and I felt so powerful. I felt like absolutely amazing. And got to like the top of the sand dune, looking out, and all you can see is this vast desert ahead of you. And you are just like, this is incredible. And I remember taking my salt tablets and I tightened up my straps on my backpack and I'm ready to run. And I was running like downhill on the sand dunes. So you've got that help of gravity, slightly sinking into the sand, but then your legs moving forward really, really well. And this was probably during the long stage. And I think I'd gone like 20 miles, 25 miles. And I was just feeling epic. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to be great, the next 25 miles or whatever. Unfortunately, those feelings don't last. So on like multi-stage races, you have like highs and lows. And it started to get dark. And it started to get cold. And the visibility started to decrease. And I was sort of by myself. And the dark can do strange things. Or for me, it's starting to strange things in my mind, where you start thinking about, what am I doing again, Sarah? Why are you out here? This is a stupid idea. Who thought it would be a good idea to run across the Sahara Desert? You've got sand in your feet, you're getting a blister. Oh my God, like, what are you doing? And then the other half of your brain is like, this is amazing. My God, this is so incredible. Like, you can do this. Like, God, I'm so proud of you. So I definitely had that sort of that mental battle. I was also expecting to hit a wall, and I don't remember hitting a wall. I do remember on the long stage, you can look ahead in the desert and you can see the lights of the camp in the distance. But that is it plays mind games with you because it looks so close. You're like, well, I can touch it. That's not too far. That's not going to take it's like, what, half an hour of running? It's like, no, it's another 7 hours of running. So you just see where you're trying to get to and you're not making any progress. It doesn't matter what you're giving it your all. You're moving forward, you're moving well, and that the finish point is not getting any closer. And then it becomes, well, I start doing things with my watch, whether it's counting. So if it's blocks of 5 minutes, to say I'm at 3 minutes 40, then I'm like, okay, so I've got 1 minute 20, let's get to 5 minutes. Okay, then am I going to reach the 5 minute mark before I can do another distance on my watch? How many steps have I done? You sort of like, you try and count off people, like catch up to runners ahead of you. You play sort of like mind games with yourself. Or sometimes you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I also realized at one point that I had slowed down so much that I thought I was running. I wasn't running. I was barely moving. And then I had to say to myself, Sarah, you've got to keep moving. And so I just had to say to myself, step, 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 over, and like literally just to get my feet moving. So that was quite fun. And then I remember coming in. I came in at 1:56 a.m. And you all wear trackers so people can follow you at home, like dot watching. It's definitely become a lot more popular now. And what was great is there was somebody, I think a guy was watching me, and he saw me come in through the webcam, and I blew a kiss to the webcam, and he managed to capture a photo of me blowing a kiss. And I have to say, I look at this photo. And I look, so I was actually like, my God, I look amazing. And I got the biggest endorphin high you could imagine. So I just run 52 miles and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I feel incredible. Blew my kiss at the camera. I was like, wow, like, get me. Like, oh my God. And then my brain was like, but you could carry on going. You could run further. And I was like, oh my God, I could run further. I could do this again. Then in the distance between crossing the finish line of the long stage, having a sip of like this very sweet tea that they give you and walking to my tent, my whole body obviously then sort of started to collapse as all of maybe like the adrenaline had leaves your system and you start to seize up as you're walking. So I'd gone from like running like pretty slowly to suddenly like all my legs, my calves, my glutes, my back, everything seizing up. And I was just in a whole world of pain, like where where you can't lie down, like your feet hurt, the front of your feet hurt, your legs, like everything is just, and there's no comfortable way to lie. Like it was just pain. Like you want to sleep, but you can't sleep because like the adrenaline, the cortisol, all the endorphins, everything's just going around your body, and like your mind is like wide awake, but you're like, your body is going sleep, sleep, sleep. But that was, to be honest, that was phenomenal. Like when you look back and you're just like, wow, I did that. But to be honest, the more impressive thing for me was the following morning. So I got in at 1:56. So I was sort of lying in my tent at about 2:10 past 2 in the morning, slept through to 8 o'clock. There was still Marathon des Sables runners coming through. So you have like 48 hours to do this stage. And I'd done it in, I don't know, 20, 8 I can't remember the hours, however many hours. So while I'd been sleeping for 8 hours, there had been people who were still out on the race course. And that's what blows my mind. They were still going. They were still on their feet. And that got me emotional. Like when you're standing there cheering the other competitors coming in, it's just amazing to see that level of focus and determination and that willpower, and you're just blown away. Like it's honestly one of the most impressive feats I've seen. Like it was just amazing, like what people had put themselves through. So that's sort of so if you do it all in, because you've got that 2 days for it, if you do that long stage in one day, the next day is basically like a rest day. So you're watching other people coming in, supporting them, cheering them. You don't really do anything. You eat, you just drink water, you hydrate, you just basically, a lot of people do foot maintenance. But it was quite, I'd say, for me, because the mentally the hardest thing and what I was looking forward to was that long stage, that 52 miles. The rest of it, to be honest, was a bit of a disappointment, because for me, it felt like the race was over then. Like I was done then. Like mentally, I was like, yeah, I'm over it. But you haven't received your medal yet. And this is actually quite interesting. I remember finishing, and I'd visualized getting that medal around my neck. And I finished and I got the medal around my neck and I had my photo taken, and I felt this joy and this happiness. It maybe lasted 20, 30 seconds. And then mentally in my head, I was like, right, that's done. What's next? Okay, done. Let's go. And that actually made me stop, because I was like, whoa, 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 Sarah, hold on. You spent almost 18 months of your life getting to here and to this point, and you're experiencing 20, 30 seconds of joy. That's not okay. And that was a wake-up call for me, because I was like, I can't live my life like this. And bear in mind, I am a goal-driven person. And maybe that's what I've been doing throughout all of my life. Get my goal, tick it off. Right, next goal, tick it off, achieve, tick it off, achieve, achieve, achieve. But that for me was really eye-opening, because it was like, I've given everything to get here, like even my health, spent a lot of money, and I'm literally 20, 30 seconds of joy, and then it's over and I'm thinking about the next thing. So that was actually a really key lesson for me, one of the biggest lessons I've learned, because I thought, I do not want to continue to live my life like this. It's not about reaching that end point. It is not about getting the medal around your neck. It's about the day-to-day. It's about the day-to-day joy of doing what you're doing, which is actually why I ended up doing the Appalachian Trail, because I also got really upset. I remember I was on the train home, so I flew back home, train at Euston, so London Euston, getting the train back home to like Liverpool, and I was walking along the platform, and in London it's so busy, there's people all around you. And I felt so changed as a person. But suddenly I'm like back in London, and all these strangers, and nobody knew what I had done and what I had achieved. And like the emotions just overwhelmed me. And I ended up just like bursting into tears on the platform, because it was just like too much. Like it was just like I've changed so much, but no one else has. Because it wasn't only the race, it was literally finishing the race was also another start line for me. That was my new line in the sand. It's like, which I stepped over to be like, Sarah, you're tough enough. You can do tough girl challenges. You can share your motivation, your inspiration. You can share these stories of women and girls. You can go on to live this life that you want to lead. You've proven it to yourself. You've proven it to others. So that was another second key learning as well. So it's to experience the joy every day, and it's about the journey. Like, and I live that now. Like, it's literally about the joy every day, enjoying what I'm doing. Yes, don't get me wrong, I still love to achieve and set goals and adventures, but with every other challenge that I've done, getting to the finish line is not the major achievement. It's normally starting, and it's maintaining that throughout, like big hikes and challenges that I do. And when I finish, it's like, yeah, it's nice, but it's not the be all and end all. Well, it was funny because my brother had a friend who'd done marathon dressage and he hated it. And I was like, well, I remember when my brother was telling me this, but I was like, and I was thinking the complete opposite. I was thinking, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was incredible, like, just to be out there doing this. So, but you know what? It hadn't even crossed my mind that I wouldn't enjoy it. But it made me realize, like, well, Sarah, I really love doing all the training, and I really love being out on doing the actual adventure. But the adventure was too short because it was over in, like, 6 or 7 days. And I wanted it to be a longer adventure, which is why I ended up going into almost like the hiking side of things, because I then heard about like the Appalachian Trail. And on the Appalachian Trail, 2,200 miles. And because I'd done Marathon des Sables, which, marathon a day to day, back to back, when I worked it out with the Appalachian Trail, I was like, well, that's only, if I do it in 100 days, well, that's only 22 miles per day. Easy. Ridiculous. And that's what I ended up doing in 2017. Now, I would say, so Marathon des Sables definitely, it set me up, it put me on the right path, because I felt like I now had the credentials of being an adventurer, because I'd done something which other people had deemed hard and, the toughest foot race, in the world. And I'd done it. And I was like the 9th British woman. I was 45th woman out of like 159 competitors. I was 443 out of 1,100 competitors. I'd sort of, to be honest, impressed myself with what I'd done. But the Appalachian Trail, that's what sorted out, maybe I'd say sorted out my head. Because what I had during the Appalachian Trail was I had the thinking time, I had the processing time. So initially doing my Marathon des Sables was like, this is like the first adventure, the first sort of challenge. It's putting myself out there. The Appalachian Trail was when I got to be out in nature day after day after day. And I got to really deeply think about my life, my journey, what I want to do, even more so than, I mentioned at the start about, spending time in South America. The Appalachian Trail really sorted out the baggage. It cleared, I organized my filing cabinets, I put things in order, shredded other things, relabeled, or got myself mentally organized and in a place so that when I finished on the Appalachian Trail, I think previously, like, there was like that lack of confidence in myself, like, oh, can I do this? Am I tough enough, etc. And yes, I'd done it with Marathon des Sables, but there was still that element of like, can I really do this? Like, not having that self-belief. But when I finished the Appalachian Trail, I was done with all of that, because I got to that point with me, my relationship with me, where I truly had worked on myself, and I knew my pros, my cons, my flaws, etc., how I work, what I'm good at, what I'm not so good at, but also got to that point where, like, I really love myself, like, not in that arrogant way, but in that, like, I'm good enough, like, and I knew that, and I still know it, but I got that after the Appalachian Trail, and that for me was the game changer. Like, September 10th, 2 p.m, 2017, finishing the Appalachian Trail. That was when I was like, Sarah, you can do really hard things. You can show up day to day. You show up day after day after day, do these 22 plus miles. And towards the end, I was doing 30-mile plus days, carrying a heavy pack, self-supported, solo, through rocky, mountainous, terrain, like the White Mountains, etc. But finishing that was when it deeply changed for me inside. It was like I had that real belief in myself. Yeah.
Now 10 years later, and that belief remains stronger than ever. And that does bring us to the end of Sarah Williams' story on the podcast. But of course, there is so much more. You can catch up with everything Sarah has done since then on her website and through her podcast. And of course, I will provide links to all of that in the show notes. I want to give a big thank you to Sarah Williams for coming on the podcast and sharing this part of her journey. Thank you so much, Sarah. And a huge congratulations on a decade of Tough Girl Challenges and the Tough Girl podcast. Yeah, thank you for everything you do in this space. It is really incredible. And on that note, Sarah is going to reach 800 episodes with the Tough Girl podcast in August. And as a podcaster who has been at this only half that amount of time, I am just so inspired by everything Sarah does. So thank you, Sarah. Congratulations. And yeah, go subscribe and listen to the Tough Girl podcast and keep up with Sarah's adventures on the Tough Girl Challenges YouTube channel. Again, you can look to the show notes and find all the ways that you can do that. That does bring us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. I always appreciate you coming and listening to these stories. And I also appreciate when you share this podcast with somebody else who you know will like these stories too. That is going to do it for me. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I'm the host and producer of this podcast. And until next week, I wish you healthy, joyful, totally adventurous strides forward.
Women's running. Women's running stories.